Now, in addition to 101.1 FM radio, you can get us online. We are on YouTube. Just search for RCI on YouTube and you'll be able to follow the program right there. And of course, if you want to call in to tell us what's on your plate today, the number to do so is 452-3046. Again, 452-3046. And you can also WhatsApp your messages in to 724-0008. You can also, of course, also call into that number. And again, that WhatsApp number is 724-0008. Now, some birthday greetings for today going out to Miss Denise Lay. She's celebrating a big birthday today. We do hope that she's having a great one. Also sending birthday greetings to Mr. Carlos Michel. Happy birthday to you, sir. And we do hope that you're having a wonderful and blessed birthday celebration. Also sending birthday greetings to Mr. Shane Cherry over at Choice TV. Happy birthday to you, Shane. And we do hope that you're having a wonderful, wonderful birthday. It's also the birthday of Mr. Jermaine Anthony. Happy birthday to you, sir. And we do hope that you're having a splendid birthday celebration. And we're also going to be sending some birthday greetings to Miss Amara Auguste, who's celebrating her very, very special birthday today. So, Amara, we hope that you're having lots of fun and you're going to have lots of cake as well. And you'd, of course, also be celebrating your birthday, if they were still alive, with T.S. Eliot and Winnie Mandela. Bit of history for today. In the year 1580, Sir Francis Drake completed his circumnavigation of the world, sailing into Plymouth Harbor aboard the Golden Hind. In the year 1687, the Acropolis in Athens was attacked by the Venetian army trying to eject the Turks, which had taken possession of that city, and in the process damaged the famous Parthenon. In the year 1815, Russia, Prussia, and Austria signed what was known as the Holy Alliance. 1901, on this day, Great Britain annexed the Ashanti Kingdom in West Africa and placed it under the governor of the Gold Coast. Of course, that later became the country we know as Ghana. In the year 1918, on this day, the beginning of the Meuse-Argonne Offensive, where more than 1 million American soldiers participated in the largest and most costly offensive of World War I. And on this day, in 1960, Cuban leader Fidel Castro delivered a 4-hour and 29-minute long speech at the United Nations. We now move on to our dish of the day. The Daily Dish is brought to you the kind compliments of our good friends at Tiles Plus.
One test for your home, I see. Bathroom, kitchen, pantry. Need test for your balcony. Come down to Tiles Plus, satisfaction guarantee. Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus. Big test with unbeatable cost. Customer service, A+. With all kind of tests, come down to Tiles Plus. We also got gasway and vanity. Books, doors, you'll see. Come down to mind nobody. We got the best tiles on island. Trust me. We are located Land Street in Castries, Bosses Jugos and Slack Street in Beaufort. Telephone number 453-7939.
Serving now, the Daily Dish.
And welcome back to our program here at the Lunchroom on Radio Caribbean International. Now, of course, it's always politics out and about, and part of the conversation now seems to be stemming on the matter of taxation. And I think a bit of tit for tat in the issue of taxation on charcoal. That seems to be a very popular issue that, of course, both political parties have raised over the years. And for one reason or another, it seemed to have been a very popular thing to have, of course, had some form of tax on in the past. To the point that, of course, it has been on our books over the time. Of course, the reality is that things have changed somewhat significantly in terms of where we get our fuel for cooking. Of course, we do know that by and large at this point in time, a lot of households are more dependent on liquid propane gas, LPG, which of course is imported into this country. And it has been for quite some time now being in fact subsidized by the government, in particular based on the subsidy is specifically for the smaller LPG containers, the canisters. Those are the 20, 22 pound LPG tanks. And of course, that has been the case for some time. But every so often, of course, the issue of having fun in terms of the matter of taxation and taxing of charcoal seems to be coming up. And, again, I suppose a lot of times you see these pieces of legislation have been on the books. They have not been fully adapted, or sometimes they have not been amended over the years, and sometimes they still present themselves there. Now, in this instance, or in some instances, they get copied and pasted as well from old legislation. So even though you have new legislation, sometimes some of the things that are covered in the old legislation just are brought across into the new legislation. And so this matter really requires us to, I think, have a more serious look at some of the legislation that is in place. It's tedious work quite often, and legislative drafting is something that takes a lot of time. It takes a certain type of skill set of legal work and of legal mind, certainly. And it is quite often not something that you have in great supply, that of legislative drafters. And it has been our problem for quite a while, having sufficient capacity within the government, in the civil service, to undertake a lot of that work. But clearly, I think the time has come for us to do a better review of many of these pieces of legislation. And of course, the major issue in terms of that too is to ensure that you've got compliance, and to also ensure that the legislation is in keeping with what is best practice and what makes sense today. We have seen, for instance, quite recently that case involving defamation, and a case that was brought against the leader of the opposition, the Honorable Alan Shastney, by the current Deputy Prime Minister, the Honorable Ernest Hilaire, on this whole matter of the vehicle and Land Rover and all of that. We know that story already, but the issue, of course, was things that were said, and the lawyers representing Mr. Shastney were able to find a very dated provision within the Civil Code of St. Lucia, and were able to argue, and they were able to argue that successfully right up to the Privy Council, that in fact the laws of St. Lucia, in the event where in certain matters dealing with tort law and contract law, that the laws of England, or the statutes of England, in other words, laws that were passed by the UK Parliament, it's not just common law, laws passed by the UK Parliament, would in fact apply in St. Lucia. And so it's then meant that, of course, these provisions were coming from the colonial era. They were coming from a time when these laws were last reviewed, I think, in great detail by none other than Sir Alan Lewis, the father of Sir Vaughan Lewis, and who was, of course, at one point in time also our Chief Justice, and later on, and also Governor General. He, in fact, I think back in the 1950s, about 1954, had done this considerable degree of work reviewing the civil code. And so those are the provisions that were in place well over 70 years ago. And we still see them applying today. And so, of course, the need to review the civil code is another one of these issues that is certainly outstanding, but is certainly very necessary, because there are certain provisions in there which relate to the ordinary lives of St. Lucians in terms of issues of inheritance, in terms of issues of land, and the provisions of Queen's Chain are in fact encapsulated under the civil code. And so this concept of sekat par droit, the 50 paces of the king, that coastal buffer area is actually within our civil code legislation, and many other things dealing with inheritance, for instance, and the nature of our system of inheritance. And of course, it is what certainly also makes us fairly unique within the West Indian context in terms of our mixed form of law because of that civil code. But it certainly does need to be looked at within the modern spectacles of the reality that we're dealing with now, because we certainly have been seeing some of the major issues relating to issues of inheritance and how everybody has a share. I mean, it seems very fair in our when people die intestate, but it can become so very complicated sometimes as well in terms of the subdivision of land or the mutation of lands. So there are these provisions that require some scrutiny, and even matters dealing with the issue of say things like birth certificates and death certificates. I recall many years ago, one lawyer of blessed memory, Hilford de Turville, QC, raising the matter of the issue of these death certificates and birth certificates. And quite recently, I did note that former Minister of Sustainable Development, Dr. James Fletcher, actually made a post on this matter regarding the issue of these births and death certificates. And really the issue has nothing to do with the actual what's on the form, but what the form is printed on. And the legislation, in fact, states and specifies precisely the size of the paper that it is supposed to be printed on, and sometimes even the color of the paper that that these forms are supposed to be printed on. And I remember many years ago, the issue at the time was that these forms had to be typed. They had to be typed on very special typewriters. So this was not any ordinary typewriter that you may even have available. And they were very specific typewriters which could actually type on these forms. And of course, in a country like St. Lucia, you could well imagine that there were only so many of these typewriters available in the civil status registry. And I think at the time, I think they must have, I suppose through old age and wear and tear, simply were not able to type anymore, or whatever the case may be. And clearly there was a problem. And so because of that, there was a whole backlog of not being able to deliver on these birth certificates or death certificates, whatever the case was at the time, because simply the typewriters were not available, and then sometimes the papers are not available. And of course, it becomes very complicated too in the modern era where we're dealing with electronic copies, and we're trying to modernize in terms of the use of forms, or digital forms, or, as the case may be, or even simply just moving towards online capture of information and not necessarily having a PDF where you fill in a form. that has caused for us to be somewhat behind, certainly. And really, the issue in very many instances is that the legislation simply needs to be changed. It simply needs to be modernized to allow for easier processing of information or easier processing of things. Now, quite often we find ourselves in situations where we're asking for all forms of information. And sometimes information you've got to ask as to how relevant it is really. But of course, because and you can well understand in today's world, identity theft is a big issue online. It's a major problem. And the issue of identity is very much important. And it is why many of these checks are put in place by various institutions, financial institutions, for instance, as to be able to say where you are actually living or who you are and that sort of thing. But sometimes even the information that is there is sometimes not even really required by legislation. In very many instances, organizations or institutions decide what kind of information they actually want. And it's, in some sense, good. But then what happens when, in the case of St. Lucia, for instance, some of the basic elements of identification are actually not very well defined? And a very common one in the case of St. Lucia is that of your address. Where do you actually live? And in some countries, it is a very big deal. I mean, if you are to move from one address to another, you actually have to go to an office, and that has to be registered. You've got to actually say that you are living in such and such a place. And of course, the addresses are very specific down to the door. Down to the property that you're at, and the floor that you're on, or whatever the case may be, so that people can actually know where exactly where you are supposed to live. And of course, it is important. We have, of course, not developed that level of complexity, and of course, no doubt the chagrin of the postal services, and they, of course, have been trying over the years to get some sort of a system in place in terms of postal addresses. But the reality is that the vast majority of people have very, what you would say, perhaps generic addresses. I live at Touge Castries, or I live at Diga Miku, or Diga Choiseul. And that's the extent of the address. And there are, of course, no street numbers or house numbers, and the streets are not named. And, it becomes very, very difficult to actually be able to identify where people are supposed to be. And, of course, it's a major challenge, as we can well appreciate even right now, with issues of trying to collate the census, which is still ongoing at this point in time. But it is certainly a major challenge in terms of the issues of banking and finance and being able to actually figure out where people actually are at any point in time. And so it is something that I think when we are looking at some of the systems that we actually are creating, are they really that very useful? Is it really that very useful for a bank to say, or to ask for you to be able to show a billing address, when the billing address is going to say, I live at Soufrière St. Lucia, and that's the address. And so we certainly need to be thinking now as to how we can ensure that we're modernizing in terms of many of these systems that are necessary for identity, but as well, whether it may be a birth certificate, whether it may be the issue of even death certificates. And even as I'm on that matter of death certificates, which is an interesting one, because it is a requirement, for instance, of the National Insurance Corporation that if you're on the pension, you've got to show that you're still alive so that you can collect your pension. So even right now, there's this system in place where you have to, I think every 6 months, pretty much, avail yourself to the NIC office, whoever the closest one may be to your home, so that you can actually say that I am alive. Now, I would think, of course, in situations like that, that we can develop better systems in place as a country to make life a lot easier for pensioners, to make life a lot easier for senior citizens who invariably are already individuals who are less indisposed to actually getting out and traveling, and certainly they may be frail, they may have challenges as the case may be, and there must be better ways to ensure that we can in fact validate that these individuals are alive or dead. There are only about 1,000 deaths, I think, or thereabouts a year in the case of St. Lucia. And it cannot be that difficult, for instance, for the Civil Status Registry to generate a list of less than 100 people a month to say that these are the individuals who in fact have died for the month of September or the month of November, whatever the case may be, and remit that to the National Insurance Corporation to simplify a lot of these systems as well. And of course, you clearly, what happens when the individual is overseas or the individual is collecting a pension and they are somewhere else? Obviously, these systems of physically going into an office are very, very dated. And we need to start thinking about a lot of these systems that we are putting in place in terms of requesting for information and how those things can be streamlined to the benefit of all who are in fact having to provide that information. Because as we've seen, it can become quite cumbersome and it can become quite difficult. Just earlier on today, I was seeing the case of somebody in Jamaica, a young person who was, I suppose, living overseas and had come back to Jamaica. And they were raising the issue of how difficult it was in Jamaica to be able to get a driver's license. And they were making the point that they had to they had to go to the place physically, whatever is the DMV or equivalent, and to say, okay, I want a driver's license. And the person said, okay, well, you need to fill out this form. And then, okay, and then you got to pay this amount. But guess what? You can't pay the amount here. You got to go to the tax office to pay. And of course, the tax office is not even in the same town that you are in right now. It's in a whole other parish where you then have to go to pay that. And of course, you then have to go and get a JP to then sign off on the photographs, the 3 photographs that you've got to provide, and showing that, you know, there were so many of these little layers and these little steps that were required to be able to provide this driver's license. Now, thankfully, in the case of St. Lucia, I think we're a little better off than in comparison to Jamaica, because at least you can go to the Ministry of Infrastructure and actually pay for that service and use your debit or credit card at that premises. So we've come some way, but we certainly have a long way to go in terms of the delivery of public services in general. And we've seen the issues that have plagued the matter of the passport office. We've seen some efforts to try to make it better, certainly in terms of the premises. I believe they're supposed to be moving to new premises soon. Hopefully that will help the process, because there have been air quality issues at the current location. But even beyond that, the challenge of being able to process these things, having to physically go in person. Yes, there should be some, opportunity as well to, of course, do so. But then we should also be thinking potentially, especially in terms of maybe even renewals, could there not be a possibility of doing some of these processes online? So, unfortunately, after many, 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 many years of trying to digitize certain databases and digitize certain registries, we are still very, very far off in being able to have a lot of these services online and having a lot of these services easily available to all and sundry, not just to St. Lucians living on island, but to St. Lucians in the diaspora as well, or other persons who wish to do business. And that still certainly does need to be a major focus, the issue of doing business and streamlining of many of these various processes. We can see it in so many areas. There's been some progress in some, yes, in terms of driver's licenses, there's been good progress. But in so many other areas, we are still certainly outstanding, and we can only say that we're still kind of backward when it comes to being able to get some of these processes streamlined. So it is something that we've got to keep very much on focus, because these little things quite often take up a lot of time and a lot of people's time. And when you think about it, it's maybe a passport today. It might be a death certificate or a birth certificate tomorrow. It might be a land register next week. And many of these things, unfortunately, require one to take up a line, to go out very early in the morning, to try to get onto the line early so that you avoid the rush. And even if you do that, you're still ending up in those situations. And of course, even then, the process takes a very, very long time. So we definitely have to, as a country, look at some of these pieces of legislation, look at the issues of the processes, the business processes that exist, and to see how they can be streamlined, how they can be made more efficient, because those things matter in terms of your ability to attract investment, your ability for people to do business right here on island. That's our dish of the day. We are actually also due for our weather break, our weather report. So we're going to take that in with Keisha in just a bit.
This has been The Daily Dish.
One tiles for your home, I see. Bathroom, kitchen, pantry. Need tiles for your balcony. Come down to Tiles Plus, satisfaction guarantee. Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus. Big tiles with unbeatable cost. Customer service, A+. It's all kind of tiles. Come down to Tiles Plus. We also glad gas and vanity. Box, doors, you'll see. Come down to mind nobody. We got the best tiles on island. Trust me. We are located Land Street in Castries, Bosses, Jugosile, and Slack Street in Beaufort. Telephone number 453-7939.
Guinness Sounds of Greatness Purchase and Win promotion. Guinness is excited to give away some exciting prizes with the purchase of Guinness and Guinness Smooth. Purchase a 6-pack of Guinness or Guinness Smooth at participating supermarkets, or Guinness Smooth on special at participating bars island-wide for a chance to win a Guinness Bluetooth boombox and other prizes, event passes, smartphones, and more. Guinness, made of more. Drink and live responsibly.
And the latest weather report is brought to you by Floor and Island Style Tile and Bath.
Hurricane season can be unpredictable, but your business doesn't have to be. In the face of adversity, you need a partner that goes above and beyond. Choose the path of resilience and certainty with C&W Business. Through disaster recovery as a strategy solution, C&W Business will safeguard your critical data, maintain seamless communication channels, and help you bounce back faster than ever before. Visit our website, cwcbusiness.com/myopenbusiness to learn more. Remember, a safe business is an open business.
Girl, I've been so stressed searching for the perfect tiles to complete my home.
Really?
Yeah, it's always the same white, beige, and gray tiles with these tile stores. Like they're all buying from the same place. You're the design expert. Help me, please. I'm fed up.
What are you looking for?
Something different. Something that says Caribbean beauty and suits my personality. Something vibrant and classy with a little razzle-dazzle.
Okay, Ms. Razzle Dazzle, I know just the place. Island Style Tile and Bath, they're my #1 store for everything tile. And with their new In Living Color collection, you'll find the most gorgeous styles to give you that splash of Caribbean flair you're looking for.
That sounds perfect.
I'll even take you myself and throw in a free design consultation.
I'll never say no to that, sis. I can't afford you anyway.
Visit our Island Style showrooms in Castries, Rodney Bay, and Vieux-Fort, or call 450-452 or 453 Tile. We'll help bring your vision to life in living color.
This is Radio Caribbean International. It's now time for the weather news.
And the latest weather report is as of noon today, 26th September 2023, and our forecasters are Vigil Saltipus and Shema Joseph. Present weather at Uranor is partly cloudy with showers nearby. Present weather at GFL Charles Airport is partly cloudy. Present temperature at Uranor Airport, 33 degrees Celsius or 91 degrees Fahrenheit. Last night, minimum temperature at Uranor Airport was 25 degrees Celsius or 77 degrees Fahrenheit. Relative humidity at Uranor Airport is 65%. Winds at Uranor Airport is blowing from the east at 17 miles per hour or 28 kilometers per hour. Rainfall in the 24-hour period that ended at 8 a.m. today. Uranor Airport, 0.2 millimeters. At GFL Charles Airport, 4.8 millimeters. Total rainfall for the month of September so far at Uranor Airport is 64.2 millimeters. At GFL Charles Airport, 66.1 millimeters. Sunset today, 5:57 p.m. Sunrise tomorrow, 5:53 a.m. Forecast for St. Lucia valid for the next 24 hours. The winds will be blowing from between the northeast and east near 9 miles per hour or 15 kilometers per hour, becoming lighter at times. Weather partly cloudy to cloudy skies with scattered light to moderate showers and possibly isolated thunderstorms. Marine forecast for seas in a 25-mile or 40-kilometer radius from St. Lucia. Tides for Castries Harbor, high at 1:57 p.m. Low at 6:51 p.m. Tides at Viewfort Bay, high at 3:04 p.m. Low at 8:18 p.m. Seas a slight moderate with waves of 3 to 5 feet or 0.9 to 1.5 meters. Forecast for the Les Antilles, partly cloudy skies, becoming cloudy at times with scattered showers and possibly isolated thunderstorms. Tropical weather outlook, a trough system is expected to cause occasional cloudiness with scattered showers and possibly isolated thunderstorms over the Les Antilles during the forecast period. At 11 a.m. today, the center of Tropical Storm Felipe was located near latitude 17.3 degrees north, longitude 50.3 degrees west, or 845 miles east of the northern Leeward Islands. Felipe is expected to remain over the open water and poses no direct threat to our region. A tropical wave located over the central tropical Atlantic is moving westward at near 17 miles per hour or 28 kilometers per hour. The wave has a high chance of tropical cyclone formation during the next 48 hours. And that there is the latest weather report for today, 26 September 2023. We say thank you to our forecasters, Vigil Saltibus and Shema Joseph. And the latest weather forecast is brought to you by Flow and Island Style Tile and Bath.
This has been RCI's Weather News. For more information, call the Weather Hotline at 454-3452. RCI 101 number 1.
Hurricane season can be unpredictable, but your business doesn't have to be. In the face of adversity, you need a partner that goes above and beyond. Choose the path of resilience and certainty with C&W Business. Through disaster recovery as a strategy solution, C&W Business will safeguard your critical data, maintain seamless communication channels, and help you bounce back faster than ever before. Visit our website, cwcbusiness.com/myopenbusiness to learn more. Remember, a safe business is an open business.
best deals on tires are at Island Style.
Baby, calm down.
Get into the festive spirit with our pre-Christmas style clearance sale. Starting now. We're slashing prices on a wide selection of high-quality tires, offering unbeatable discounts from 15 to 50% off. Enjoy huge savings now on our massive inventory of ceramic and porcelain tires. For every need, we've got the perfect tires to make your home merry and bright. Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity to give your home a stunning makeover at jaw-dropping prices. Visit us today in Castries, Rodney Bay, and Viewfolks, or call 450-451-453 tile. That's 8453 today. Hurry down. These deals won't last long. Save money now. Only at Island Style.
Get ready to celebrate good times with Heineken. Heineken is turning 150 years old in 2023, and we're inviting you to join the party. It's a celebration like no other. Simply grab a Heineken 6-pack or Heineken bucket at your favorite participating outlets. And what's in it for you? Amazing prizes, of course. Win Heineken product and exclusive merchandise, luxurious staycations, and sparkling jewelry vouchers. But wait, it gets even better. It's your chance to win the grand prize of a VIP trip for two to the Heineken St. Martin Regatta. Join us in celebrating 150 years of good times. Get your Heineken today and raise a glass to the good times. Remember, always enjoy Heineken responsibly.
Advance your career at Lightspark Training with a globally recognized certification. Conveniently located on High Street, Castries, Lightspark offers a wide range of programs to make the most of your career. Certifications in project management, risk management, quality management, marketing, ACC accounting, human resources, Microsoft, Cisco, and IT technician certification, graphic design, web design, and programming. Complete a diploma in accounting in 6 months or a bachelor's degree in just over a year. Call us today at 451-8918 or visit us at www.lightspark.com.
And welcome back to the lunchroom here, at Radio Caribbean International. And of course, the number to call in to tell us what's on your plate today, it is 452-3046. Again, 452-3046. And don't forget, you can also send in your messages to our WhatsApp number. That is 724-0008. Again, 724-0008. And we've been speaking about modernizing, and from a few different angles. One, of course, the issue of the legislation, quite a bit of it being dated. And that seems to have been creating quite a lot of embarrassing situations for politicians and the politics of the day, in regard of whether it may be charcoal one day, it might be on the issue of defamation another day, and it is certainly the business of legislators to legislate. It's their duty to ensure that the laws are in fact being updated, and part of that requires that they also take up the duty of ensuring that they read the laws. It is a big task, certainly in all countries. And you see in the United States of America, even when they are dedicated legislators, they sometimes have large offices with their own legal teams and other support staff and lots of people. And quite often the legislation is hundreds of pages long, and it takes a long time, and many of them never actually ever read all those pieces of legislation. But let's take in a call at this time as we head to the phone lines to take in our first call for the day. Good afternoon and welcome to the lunchroom. What's on your plate today? Hello, good afternoon. Hi, caller.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. Concerning what you're talking about, the NIC and the pensioners and all of those things, I think they really should try a way to change it up. Because you see, sometimes every 6 months having to go to NIC, you have to take a ticket and you have to be sitting there wasting so much time.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, now with me, sometimes I have to actually find a JP to sign something for me.
Oh.
Yeah, but thank God right now, and you still have to pay every 6 months. But thank God there's
So you got to pay a JP every 6 months?
Yes.
Wow.
But thank God there's one sitting outside the NIC, And he said he's not going to accept money from me. It's just the fact that I cannot see he's not accepting money from me.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also have a friend, her husband is a retired correctional officer, and he's saying like every 6 months you have to go up, I think it's the treasury, and they have to go upstairs to sign. Now he says it's a pressure on his knee. And he said
and that is because he's getting a government pension?
Yeah, government pension. And he said there's a lot of other people he does see. And going up those stairs can be pressure on their knees. So he said, I was saying, why don't they know where certain people live. Every 6 months, why don't you send maybe 2 of your people to some community center where those people live? Tell them that you put it out there so they know at the end of 6 months that person will be coming into the community center somewhere where they can go, something where they accessible, where they can just go in quickly, get this done. But it's a lot of...
To me, caller, I think in the case of the NIC, from my understanding, they have inspectors in different districts or regions. And I think if you are not able to come out, you can actually ask them to either come to you or they will video call or something of the sort. That's my understanding.
Yeah, they did.
Now,
because I think they did it for me once because she told me she would come to my home, but she died some time ago.
Oh.
I tell her, no, it's okay. I have my brothers and they can take me in, but sometimes it's just a long way. Well,
it's exactly called. It's a wait, it's a time, it's effort. And to me, I mean, it can't be that difficult. I mean, once you have the person on file and that you have their picture and and whatever it is, to me it should be a matter of calling in. It should be calling in to make sure, hello, Mrs. So and so. I hope you're okay. I hope how things going. So then it becomes not as much of the formality, the rigidity of signing a document and whatnot to say that you're alive, but simply that, the NIC is checking up on you and making sure that, it changes the tone and the approach completely. And I think that's how it should really be, to be quite honest. But the idea that a person has to go in, it's almost as if you're on parole.
And a number, you're given a number, and you have to sit there until they call your number and all of those things. And I see there people, they can't see, but sometimes so many people are there. And it's because I'm fortunate sometimes that maybe the security will just make me pass quickly, and I go in and come out without having to sit and wait or something like that. But there are lots of other people. Now, sometimes when these things are done for you, other people have a problem with it. And I don't like, going and taking over people's space, even though I have my blindness, because I feel if you're there before me, you should get service before me. That's how I feel. Look at it. But at the end of the day, it's just too much, a lot. To me, you can just call in. Then they know your voice by now. Some of them know you. They know your location and everything. But to always go every 6 months, they asked the one, as my friend husband was telling me, going to the treasury at the top there is... It's just so problematic for him, just going up those stairs every 6 months.
Yeah.
They have children, he can do it online. But why don't they put those things online? Because at least you have people that can do it for you if you're not able to do it. But nothing like that is being done.
Yeah. And I mean, let's be clear. Obviously, there has to be a system in place, right? Because this whole issue of verification is necessary because we know that sometimes you can end up with situations of fraud. That there could be issues where people are, have somebody who might have died 5 years ago and they're still collecting the individual's pension. So obviously we know that the system is necessary, right? But then certainly there must be a better way of being able to process it. We are a country that right now thousands of people here are employed in call centers providing services for individuals overseas and whatnot, thousands of miles away. Right? Right here in St. Lucia, I'm pretty certain that we can find a more humane and less burdensome system in place, right, to ensure that our seniors can deal with, simply ensuring that they're okay, right? Because that's what it really should be about, right? Making sure that these individuals... What's that?
Public service call center.
Well, I think there was an attempt to create a public service call center, 311. I think
there is one.
Right. So it's a matter of maybe dedicating some of their resources towards towards doing just that.
Yes.
And that's something that the finance ministry can work with, as well. But I mean, and if needs be, every year or every other year, you could then decide, you're doing some sort of an inspection or something of the sort. But the system has to be a little bit more sensitive, I think, than to be asking people to come out every 6 months.
And then some of the people can't even well walk. They need somebody to kind of hold them, and it's because you go there, you hear what people are saying.
Yeah, and you're dealing with pensioners, caller. Let's face it, you're dealing with people. I find it somewhat, whimsical that you're actually asking people to come out to make sure that they're still alive. I just find that a little bit strange. I think we need to find a better way of doing that aspect of business. And the other thing about it too, caller, is that the government agencies also need to be a little bit more, I suppose, if not necessarily flexible, but also facilitating. Because let's face it, people die and there are death certificates that are prepared, and they keep the information is there. So if the information is there, what do you collect? Why are you collecting it? If this is one of the reasons why you should be collecting the information, then one would think that the Civil Status Registry would make that information available to the NIC.
And also the pensioners thing there.
Yeah.
And it just save people a lot of time.
Precisely. And it's the responsibility of the state then to be able to do that back work, to take care of that. I think that the process, that is just one example of where we can streamline those processes. And I know what we'll hear, of course, well, there have been attempts to do this with DigiGov, and we've been hearing about, there's another program that was running for so many years, CARSIP, and it's years and years and years. But I'm saying, okay, let's say you don't have the whole software in place yet, and that it cannot be so difficult on a monthly basis for somebody to simply just go through the various death certificates for the month and to collate a list and send it to the relevant departments. It cannot be that difficult.
I'm hoping they're hearing you and they're hearing all of these things, and they try to put these things in place. At least it ease a lot of the burden that they have. Sometimes people they have to ask you to, because they're too much. Because it's a burden on themselves. Because when you're there, sometimes you sit and waiting. Some of them have to leave the booth and rush up. It's a lot. But they themselves too. So if they have all those things in place, they wouldn't have so many people coming and sitting and waiting.
Yeah, and you've got people who are sick. You've got people who are not well. You've got people who have mobility issues. You've got, this is, and especially, and maybe this is also a matter that the Department of Elderly Affairs, I think they've been looking at elderly affairs policy for aging and dealing with senior citizens. I think this is one of the things that they need to start thinking about as well.
It was recently, it was even at the bank. They had elderly people. There's a section for elderly people and people with disabilities.
Right.
The line was so long, and people were sitting. This elderly gentleman in a wheelchair started getting on. It was a lot of noise there because nobody was there to attend to those people that are seated there.
And it's also instructive because, the reality is that with a lot of businesses around the country, you will be providing services on multiple different platforms. Some people will be able to use the mobile banking or the mobile systems. Some people will be able to use the app. Some people will be able to use their go onto the website and process whatever it is, especially more so the millennials and the younger persons. But those who, of course, are on the other end of the spectrum, your senior citizens, they are the ones who quite likely are not going to be using those systems and who may still want to go in person into some of these banks and other institutions. And so therefore, you may very well have to think, well, okay, right now we do have a line that is providing services for seniors, but you're going to find that as the population ages, you may need to dedicate 2 lines now, for seniors and pregnant mothers and and the like. So
you don't get that.
Well, not yet. And I think maybe it requires some level of public, clamoring to and voicing for those things to actually happen. So it is that is also very much necessary too. The public has to voice their opinions on those matters.
Some people voice. You find maybe one or two person might voice, and then others don't say anything. So if you want things to work, you should be there voicing, advocating for those things. So if I am going to do it and another person won't do it, my voice is just one voice there. Another person that might quote is just, and that's what we don't do. And at the end of the day, we suffer the consequences of not speaking out and saying this, speaking out for the service that are needed for people that are elderly and people with disability.
It might be a very interesting conversation that the Department of Elderly Affairs should maybe have with the Chamber of Commerce and other players within the corporate sector regarding some of these issues. And of course with the government itself too, because government services also are part of the that spectrum of services that people are depending on and using. So, but yeah, and I think definitely the government needs to lead as well by example when it's dealing with that matter.
And I also need to speak to the doctors. So to me, most doctors, dental and all in the city, all of them, their business upstairs.
That's a tough one to change though, caller. Because, I mean, the reality is most ground floors will be retail and usually the offices are going to be on the upper floors.
When you're a doctor, you might have somebody...
The problem then is, the vertical circulation of the lifts, not having elevators.
Yes,
a lot of the buildings aren't designed that way. It's a walk up. Yeah, so you're right about that. It becomes a major task in dealing with these issues. And it's a big one that you're raising, that issue of mobility and going up the stairs. And then, in some instances, some buildings have elevators, but they don't work. Or you may not want to risk going into the elevator. Let's put it that way, too.
I don't mind going in an elevator. That's no problem.
Well, depending on how...
Although when I was going to the immigration office in the one, I rather go up the stairs than the elevator because I was told sometimes you get stuck.
There you
so
go.
I have no problem going up the stairs. And I mean, I'm somebody that like to walk. Stairs don't bother me. Things like that don't bother me because I just like to keep fit. But for the other elderly person, the much elderly that cannot make it, you see them struggling. Somebody actually sitting, asking for assistance to help them. You tell me, especially our doctors too, you can't find somewhere flat.
Unfortunately, I'm not sure that the new immigration office is going to be any better because I think it's on an upper level as well.
I think it's down. To me, I think where the Peter and Company, Waits and Coal, I don't know if that's where they're going to be used. That's where
I got the impression they were upstairs. But if this down, there's a ground level, that's good as well. So let's hope that the access is a little better than where it was before. But that's the issue of accessibility on a whole, as you rightfully pointed out. That's a really big one. I don't know how we're going to tackle that. That's going to take maybe a little while, unfortunately, for a lot of seniors who are already out there in that struggle. All right. Thanks very much for that contribution, caller. Have a good one. And, of course, the number to call in to tell us what's on your plate today is 4523046. I think you were saying, Keisha, that you have a message from our
just a
WhatsApp.
message. It's a short message saying why should we not protect the makers of charcoal? If charcoal is imported, it must attract all duties and fees.
In terms of imports, yes, I can understand that, certainly, yeah. Let's take in another call at this time. Good afternoon and welcome to the lunchroom. What's on your plate today?
Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Calixte.
Hi, caller. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine. I heard that the NTRC is advertising for a jingles competition. But my question is, should telecommunications companies raise their prices without consultation with the NTRC? And when these things happen, you hear nothing from the NTRC. Sometimes you wonder whether they exist. At least none.
All right. Thanks very much for that. Okay, good. So thanks for that. Yes, no. As far as I know, there can't be a unilateral raising of rates. So that's a very important point to be raised. Point taken, caller. We'll have to hear from the NTRC on that one. Let's take in a call at this time. Good afternoon and welcome to the lunchroom. What's on your plate today?
Yes, good afternoon. Earlier on, a lady spoke about, well, you already discussing about the NIC.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Now, I am not talking on behalf of NIC, but I'm telling you what I know.
Yes.
I find they are very accommodating. Persons who feel they cannot get to their office need to call them and give them information. They know how to call them on the phone, what questions to ask to make sure that the person is genuine, and they visit the people.
Yes, I mentioned that they actually, they in fact do have inspectors.
Yes, they do that quite a lot.
And that you can do so. But I'm not even too sure if that everybody's even aware of that, caller?
Yes.
So
That's why
might be,
I'm saying it,
yes.
because it is available. I have done it on behalf of other persons. And they called the person, they went to their home, they did everything, and every 6 months they call the person and they follow up. So they do that.
And what all I'm saying really, caller, is that probably should be the mainstream. That should be the general practice.
You think we have enough inspectors to visit the thousands?
No. But I'm saying you don't have to necessarily go out physically to actually ensure that. That's what I'm saying. You could, in fact, do just that. Whether it's a video call, whether it's a call or a normal
you
audio
mean call
call.
each person?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That can be done. That can be done.
But
And I think
yes, let me tell you.
Yes.
Yes, I agree. It can be done. But can we do it now? That's the thing.
Oh, I
These
believe
things can be done.
I
For
believe
example,
it can be done because
for example, you mentioned about the database from the
civil status registry.
Yes, and
Yes.
all that. These are good things, but are they capable of putting these things in action?
It's not rocket science, Like I'm saying, I'm not asking them to develop a very complex system. I'm not asking them to put in a database, a new automated sharing, all that. But I'm just saying that they're doing death certificates on
so they should know.
on
Yes,
a
I know.
daily basis, right? There are about 1,000 deaths from what I recall last, right? It cannot be so difficult to, if you get by the end of the month, right? You collate the information by the 15th of the next month or the 30th of the next month. You should be able to send a list to the Treasury, to the NIC.
I agree with you.
That's basic cooperation within institutions of the state.
And that would really save a lot of the problems that we're going through. Yes.
Oh, yeah, certainly.
That would be very good. But on the other hand, when it comes to the elderly, I do not think enough is being done for the elderly. People go to the banks. They want to use the toilet. It is so heartbreaking to see people want to use the toilet and they have to go through a lot of formalities before they can be allowed to use a toilet.
Wow.
I have seen that happen so many times in the bank. Recently an old man came, and I'm sure he must be a diabetic. And he said, "Oh my, I want to go to the toilet. I can't take it anymore. I want to go to the toilet." When somebody inquired, they said, "Oh, we only have a toilet upstairs, but I have to ask the manager if we can allow him to use." And all that time, the man is in distress,
Yeah, no. I know customer service needs needs a really big revamp.
Isn't being done to the elderly.
Yeah.
Before, we used to have a special line at the bank for the elderly. But I don't know, very few of them maybe still have it because I notice it has been discontinued in most of the banks.
Is that so? Okay. Oh, I didn't realize that.
Which is not, I find we in St. Lucia, we're not paying attention to our elderly.
Mm-hmm.
We have a Department of Elderly Affairs. They are trying to put things together. I hope that they do things to improve the plight of our people, our elderly, because they're going through a rough time.
Thanks very much for raising many of these issues, caller. Thanks very, very much for that. And that's a very unfortunate state of play in terms of the washrooms issue. I think we definitely need to do a little better in terms of using some common sense too. And sometimes we're very bureaucratic. Oh, we can't do this, we can't do that. And it just requires a little bit of empathy. Let's take our final call for the day. Good afternoon. Welcome to the lunchroom. What's on your plate today?
Good afternoon, Brother Calixte.
Hi, good afternoon, caller. How are you doing?
First of all, I have to say thank you for taking my call because I know time is almost up for you. But for some reason, I felt compelled to bring attention to a little detail on our gun violence and how it is affecting us and how it has affected us for the past few years. And as a parent and a father, I was heartbroken. I was very, very heartbroken when I heard the stepfather of the young man that was shot.
The 23-year-old gentleman, Mr. Henry?
Yes.
If you fought, okay.
And with the baby. And to see a father pleading. No, a father, he wasn't pleading at that time, but he was crying.
Was he the one in with the video begging?
Yes.
Yes.
The one who was recanting the story. And this brought me back to the father in the Timon area whose son was gunned down in his living room, and I think the father was in his bedroom.
The photographer? Is it
the photographer?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
And to see how broken this man was, the father of the deceased photographer. And reason why I'm bringing it up is because it is a little detail in what we experience, I experience. Most of the time, when we have shootings, it is always the mothers. It's always the mothers saying how the boy was a good boy. But on the few occasions when we see the males, the fathers, breaking down, Brother Calixte, if that doesn't touch you, I mean, I mean, when I say you, I know, I should say if that doesn't touch one. And I want to say something to actually, what's the word that I'm looking for? To actually show how far we have gone, how far we have strayed. Imagine you being in this man's position and begging the gunman not to shoot your son. You, a man, an older man, talking to a younger man. These are two men. So an older generation is pleading to a younger generation. Don't kill my son who belongs to your generation. I want St. Lucians to think about that. when you think, I think, in my perspective, when you think about it like that, it gives you such, wow, that is what St. Lucians would say. You know, a male pleading with another male, don't shoot my son. An older person, one of the older generation, sleeping in his room, his son is in his living room, and he's getting shot. I mean, we are accustomed, we are very much accustomed to hearing women, the mothers cry, women cry. But in this whole story of gun violence, when the men cry, boy called Calixte, it is touching. It hurts.
Well, unfortunately, there's a lot of grief, and I think it's affecting everybody, young and old, male and female, and and I think the other part of it too is the helplessness that I think many of these individuals are feeling, that that they're so powerless in the face of all that is going on. And he said that was his stepson, right? So this is.
No, but yes, okay. It is. So
and it's even interesting
that
too.
It's his stepson, but he never referred to him as his
right.
Stepson.
No, he never did. Yeah.
He said, "My boy, my son."
My son. Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't matter. A parent is a parent. Mm-hmm. Your child is your child, biological or not.
No, I'm just saying it's even more touching that
I know what you're saying. Yeah. I get it. But Brother Calixte, I'm telling you this. Sometimes probably we forget too fast, and probably because of the way we are wired as a people, to move on to the next. We always have to move on to the next. We are not reflective. Mm. And probably, we need to sit down and reflect. You understand? As fathers, you need to take your son and talk to your son, man. Because this is when men speak and men cry is different, and when they do it openly. And it is, this to me, this man pleading, an older generation pleading to the younger generation, don't kill my son who belongs to your generation.
Yep, that's what we can. Thanks very much for that appeal, caller. A very important one indeed, that we need to stop killing our boys. And that, of course, is going to be the end of our program for today, for this Tuesday. We'll be back again tomorrow, God willing, for another program of The Lunchroom here at Radio Caribbean International. Thanks very much for all those who called in. And, of course, again, birthday wishes to all those who are celebrating. Hope you guys have a good one. I'm your host, Calixte Jr., saying goodbye.